So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! The Detroit Lions are NFC North champions. For the first time in 30 years and for the first time in franchise history, the Detroit Lions have won the NFC North. After an 11-6 campaign, including a 6-2 road record, the Detroit Lions went on the road to a division rival's house in Week 16 and took a 30-24 victory to clinch their first NFC North title in franchise history. Now, today, I want to take a look at this game, take a look at the game that made the Detroit Lions champions and kings of the North, kind of go over the good, the bad, how the Lions have looked this week, as well as kind of basing off of how they grew from last week, and talk about next week's upcoming games and how the Detroit Lions can finish this season as potentially not just NFC North champions, not just hosting a playoff game, but potentially getting a first-round bye and being the NFC's number one seed. So, with that being said, let's take a look at this game. The Detroit Lions won a 30-24 victory in Minnesota last Sunday versus their division rivals. Now, not to toot my own horn, but I did say that this game was going to go to the Detroit Lions 29-24, so I think I did a pretty good job there for myself. Taking a look at the play-by-play, this game started out extremely high scoring as the Detroit Lions took the ball to open the game and went 14 plays, 75 yards in 7 minutes and 47 seconds, capped off by a David Montgomery rushing touchdown. But Minnesota answered on a 9-play, 75-yard drive of their own, taking 4 minutes and 22 seconds off the clock. They were able to go down and match the Detroit Lions score. The Lions 3 plays later would fumble. After a 3-play, 24-yard drive, Jahmyr Gibbs would give up the ball in less than a minute, giving the ball back to Minnesota, but the defense stood up. 4 plays, 8 yards, and 1 interception by Brian Branch. The Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings stalled a little bit throughout the middle of the first quarter as they would exchange punts, but Detroit Lions would answer a few drives later with a 13-play, 60-yard drive resulting in a field goal, putting the Lions up 10-7. And then the next drive, they would get an interception. Just 3 plays, 8 yards, and Kirby Joseph would walk away with one of his first of 2 interceptions on the day. Detroit would answer just 3 plays later, 33 yards, 50 seconds, taking a 17-7 lead, looking good before halftime. But Minnesota would answer back a 6-play, 75-yard drive, including 3 separate receptions by Justin Jefferson of 20-plus yards, would put the Detroit Lions in a situation where they were only leading by 3, with Minnesota getting the ball back at the half. So the Lions go in leading 17-14 at halftime, just 1 half away from NFC North champions. But the Vikings came out to play. In their opening drive of the second half, they went 5 plays for 81 yards in 3 minutes and 4 seconds, take a 21-17 lead. But Detroit would answer back with a 13-play, 75-yard drive, going up 23-21. However, the extra point would be missed, leaving it just a 2-point game as opposed to a 3-point game. That 1 point, that blocked extra point attempt, looked like it could be super impactful late in the game, but the Detroit Lions were able to take care of business. They would force a punt on the ensuing drive by the Vikings and then go down and again match and extend their lead with a 14-play, 83-yard touchdown, making it a 30-21 game. Kirby Joseph would walk away with his second interception of the game, 3 plays, -8 yards, a great stand by the defense, but Detroit's offense would not be able to do anything with it, punting it away in just 3 plays later. Minnesota would drive down to get an 8-play, 76-yard drive, ending in a field goal, making it a 30-24 game. And after the Detroit Lions punted with just under 3 minutes to go, there was a lot of hesitation around the Detroit Lions. There was a lot of people that had had their hopes dashed, and there was a lot of people thinking that this is how the Detroit Lions were going to blow their lead in the NFC North. And after 8 plays and 58 yards, including a 3rd and 27 converted by Justin Jefferson on a jump ball in double coverage, Nick Mullins would throw his 4th interception of the day to none other than Ifeatu Melifonwu, the player that has not started for a majority of his career, a player that over the last 2 to 3 games has been looking like an all-pro safety, came away and made the biggest play of the game and of the season for the Detroit Lions, officially clinching the NFC North title for Detroit. Now, this game had a lot of ups and a lot of downs. The Detroit Lions looked like a really good football team at times, but also they had some issues where the Detroit Lions looked like the old Detroit Lions. Starting off on the offensive side of the ball, Jared Goff went 30 for 40 for 257 yards and a lone touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But the engine of the offense and all of the explosive plays really came from the rushing attack. Jahmyr Gibbs had 15 carries for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, while David Montgomery had more carries, had 17, but only had 55 rushing yards, but walked away with a touchdown as well. Khalif Raymond got involved with 1 carry for 8 yards for a first down, and Jared Goff technically had 3 carries, but got 0 yards on the 3. Overall, the Detroit Lions would rush the ball 36 times for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, but they really didn't have that many explosive plays, with their longest rush only taking 18 yards from Jahmyr Gibbs. The receiving game was really strong for the Detroit Lions as well. Amon-Ra had 12 receptions, 106 yards, and 1 touchdown. Jameson Williams actually had his career high in receptions for the 2nd week in a row, having 5 receptions and 43 yards off of 6 targets with a long of just 12. Khalif Raymond had 29 yards off 2 receptions, while Jahmyr Gibbs had 20 yards off of 4 receptions, meaning he had 100 total scrimmage yards on 17 touches, as well as 2 touches that resulted in points. Sam Laporta had a small day, just 3 catches for 18 yards, but did convert a couple first downs there, while Donovan Peoples-Jones had 1 catch for 11 yards, again converting for a first down. Josh Reynolds had the first catch of the game for 16 yards and did not see another reception, but did see 4 targets, 1 resulting in a major penalty on Minnesota. Jahmyr Gibbs did lose his first fumble of his career, while Jameson Williams fumbled the ball again, but it did go out of bounds, resulting in a positive play for the Lions. And defensively, they were really good. Kirby Joseph looked like an elite ball hawking safety. He came away with 2 interceptions. Brian Branch came away with an interception. He had 6 tackles and a sack. Ifeatu Melifonwu had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and an interception. Malcolm Rodriguez was really strong. Alex Anzalone was really good. The pass rush was quite good, despite not having the most pressures. They came away with 4 sacks on the day, 1 being from Romeo Okwara, who forced a fumble, 2 being from Ifeatu Melifonwu, and 1 being from Brian Branch. Aiden Hutchinson didn't have the biggest day on the stat sheet, but he did have a lot of impact. He had a ton of pressures, had a couple batted balls, and was able to really, truly be an impactful playmaker for the Lions. As I said, Kirby Joseph, Ifeatu, and Brian Branch all came away with interceptions, totaling for 4 on the day for the defense. And Michael Badgley, yet again, was perfect for field goals, but had his 1 extra point attempt block. Going over to the Minnesota side of the ball and how the Detroit Lions fared against a pretty strong attack by the Minnesota Vikings. Nick Mullins went 22 of 36 for 411 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, but 4 interceptions. He was sacked 4 times on the day, but for the most part was really good. A lot of that was just throwing it up to Justin Jefferson, just throwing it up to guys that he trusted to go get the ball. I don't think that performance was necessarily a bad thing for the Detroit Lions, because they're not going to face a Justin Jefferson every single week. Although next week they will face a great wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. I don't think anybody but Justin Jefferson makes that 3rd and 27 catch. I don't think anybody but Justin Jefferson is going to have that kind of a drive at the end of the first half against the Detroit Lions defense. We had 3 different receptions of 20 plus yards. They are going to have to find a way to limit elite wide receivers, but a secondary coming away with 4 picks on the day kind of makes up for the fact that Nick Mullins threw for 411 yards. And I think what makes up for it even more is the fact that the Minnesota Vikings as a football team rushed the ball just 11 times for 17 yards in the game. Ty Chandler had 8 carries for 17 yards and a touchdown. Nick Mullins had 1 carry for 1 yard, and Alexander Madison had 2 carries for -1 yards. The team as a whole on the day allowed just 17 rushing yards. Justin Jefferson was elite yet again, 6 receptions, 141, 1 touchdown on 10 targets. KJ Osborne had a great day, 5 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Brandon Powell had a couple impactful plays, 3 for 53. TJ Hawkinson, before leaving the game with his really, really bad knee injury, was 4 for 58. Josh Oliver had the first reception of the game for 33 yards, and Jordan Addison had just 1 catch for 2 yards on 4 targets before he left the game early as well with I believe, ankle injury or lower body injury of some kind. Minnesota did fumble the ball twice. Nick Mullins lost the ball multiple times while it was recovered by his offensive lineman. Ivan Pace recovered the one from Jahmyr Gibbs, but the Detroit Lions forced 2 fumbles and 4 interceptions, essentially not getting 6 turnovers, but having an opportunity to force 6 turnovers on the day. And for a team that has really struggled to do so in the past, I think it was a good sign for the Detroit Lions and their ability to take the football away. Overall on the day, I didn't think anybody on Minnesota really stood out. Cameron Bynum was really impressive to me. He had 1 forced fumble, 8 tackles, was really solid for the Minnesota Vikings. But other than that, not a whole lot. Ivan Pace had the fumble recovery, and that was really good. He had a couple decent plays for sure. Other than that, Minnesota really didn't have all that much going for them. I think they sacked Jared Goff just 1 time, and it was on a blitz. They really weren't able to get very much pressure for a guy like Danielle Hunter, who had, I believe, was second or maybe even first in the NFL in sacks this year. Really wasn't that impactful going against either Penei Sewell or Taylor Decker. And for the most part, they really didn't have a whole lot going on defense. They had a couple nice drives. They had one takeaway on the day. But other than that, they really weren't that impactful. Jared Goff seemed very calm, very collected, was able to pretty much do whatever he wanted with the Minnesota Vikings secondary. And he was able to make it into an elite game for an elite victory for the Detroit Lions. So with that being said, and as good as it feels to say, the Detroit Lions are NFC North champions. And I know there's a lot of people saying that this team is fraudulent. There's a lot of teams saying that this game doesn't count because Minnesota had so many injuries. It does not matter. The Detroit Lions, with 2 games left in the year, are 11-4, 6-2 on the road. They are a great football team, and right now, they are playing great football. A month ago, they were not. But as of right now, over the last 2 games, really, especially over the last 2 games, the Detroit Lions are playing elite football. They're playing their brand of football, and I think this Detroit Lions team can beat anybody. And if they play this game without turning the football over, with some explosive plays from the rushing attack, a consistent rushing attack, and forcing even 1 to 2 turnovers a game, this team can go to Dallas and win. This team can beat Minnesota in the final week. They can finish 13-4 realistically, and probably I would expect them right now to finish 12-5 with a potential of being the NFL's or NFC's 2, if not number 1 seed. So with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. The Detroit Lions are champions. They are the best team in the North. They will officially be a top 3 seed in the playoff, and they will be hosting a playoff game at Ford Field in January. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your most impressive players of the day, your most impressive plays of the day, and how it feels to be NFC North champions. I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this game and what your takeaways were. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.